This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Leadership, laughter. Laughter, leadership. What's the connection? I don't know, but our next guest does. Mr. Ray Engan in the house.
Hey, David. How are you? It's good to be here. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. So before we dive in to the amazing power of leadership through laughter, tell us a little bit about the professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today and how you came to this expertise.
Well, it's an amazing little story because I screwed up everything you could possibly screw up along the way. I was the shyest kid in school. I actually wore a bucket on my head so kids wouldn't talk to me. But then I had an amazing fifth grade teacher that kind of taught me how to come alive and gave me great wisdom that, for example, like that thumping in your chest when you're nervous, it's not your heart, it's your dreams knocking on your door. And that's one of the things that I've kind of lived through and lived by. I went on to stand-up comedy and wanted to leave that because I wanted a regular job like all my friends. You don't really know what you have till you leave it, right? And then when I was there, I was a sales manager and I tried to figure out why I was successful. And I realized I reverse engineered how I got successful. And it was just simply because I was teaching people the tools of stand-up in the workplace, and not the fun type where you're talking to hundreds of people in front of a crowd, but the type where you have to go in and have 5 bikers who are playing pool at $200 a game and talk them to stop playing in 5 minutes so you can have your show. So it was the people skills of stand-up comedy that I taught to my salespeople, and that led to a very successful sales career.
Well, Ray, talk a little bit more about the people skills of comedy, because I'm imagining that from a leadership standpoint, from an executive standpoint, this is something where it's not about being funny, but it's about being more human. It's about being more approachable. Share a little bit about some client success stories or your own personal experience with how all of that sort of connects back to leadership skills and leadership capability.
One of the most amazing things that happens when you create this kind of humor thought process with people that works is the Humor Research Lab in Boulder, Colorado, gives the definition of humor as a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. So it has to be benign, so you can't hurt anybody. And it has to be surprise because you can't tickle yourself, right? But in business, you're not going for these huge laughs. You're going for putting a smile on people's face every single day. And what laughter is instant acceptance. And a lot of bosses don't understand that. For example, when you laugh, you throw your head back, and that is a subconscious sign of trust and acceptance. It's instant rapport and trust once you create laughter. And the numbers back it up, too. If you look at the productivity, salespeople sell 37% more when they're having a good time doing it. The other side of it is that other workers are 31% more productive. And the great part, if you're just a worker and want to be a leader, if you are viewed as the funny person as compared to somebody else, 84% of the people that you work with will actually say that person's doing a better job than the serious one. 84%, whether you are or not, by the way. So it's a career mover. It's a productivity increaser. It's a retention joy. So this leadership through laughter is just an untapped, for a lot of companies, it's untapped with what they can do as far as raise the level of their game.
Let's do a little objection busting or myth busting is perhaps more accurate. Number one, super surprising statistics. I mean, on one level, not surprising when you think about it like a person, but when you think about it from like a corporate culture standpoint, I'm channeling our listeners and they're like, Ray, listen, I worked really hard to get to my leadership position. I do not want to be seen as a clown. I do not want to be seen as a comedian. I do not want to be seen as not taking my job or my role seriously. This is what they're thinking. Now, you and I both know they're wrong, but how do you overcome that resistance around, leadership is serious, corporate America is serious, life is serious, managing people is serious. I can't be seen as frivolous or funny or humorous. let's unpack that myth first.
Well, you have to teach people that the laughter has to come with accountability. So the job must get done. It's not a personal thing if you have to reprimand or fire somebody. It's a job performance. They should have a good time doing it. And here's the thing, how many leadership trainings or management trainings you've ever been to that lasted for an hour or more? What did you get out of those? If you have a manager that is just stiff and talks, the average audience remembers about 3% of what they say. If you put a picture behind you, like a shiny object, like PowerPoint, that goes up to 10 or 15%. If you tell a story, they remember half of what you said. But if the story's funny, it's up to 70%. That comes from a London Business School study. It's also Stanford reproduced it. And it's just an amazing thing. The more stories you have, the better it works as a leader and as a teacher and a coach. But the pushback there is, I'm not funny. You don't have to be. Just tell stories about your failure. If you're trying to be funny, you're viewed as being a more likable boss. It doesn't even have to be funny. It just has to give the appearance of trying.
Well, that whole self-deprecating thing, I remember there was a story, this was probably 10 years ago, but I still remember the story, to your point. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, you walk into his office at Starbucks global headquarters in Seattle, and he had this big magazine rack, this big Lucite magazine rack just off on one corner of his office. And it was filled with this Starbucks magazine that they came out with probably, early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2005, 6, something like that. And this was a complete disaster. The Starbucks magazine was a complete disaster. They lost a couple $1 million. It never went anywhere. And it was really a public embarrassment. And people say, Howard, what's with the magazine rack in your office? And he says, oh, the magazine rack. Well, that magazine, that was my idea. It was a complete and utter disaster. And I keep it here in the office. So when I think I'm right about everything, I just look over at the magazine rack. And I know that I can make as big a mistake as anybody who works here. Now, do you want to follow that guy as a leader? Or do you want to follow the one who, rah, 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 right? Very serious, very self-important. I'm the boss. You're the minions. I never make mistakes. I'm perfect. You're a flawed character. That's self-deprecating. I want to talk about self-deprecating humor for a minute. Whether it's admitting your foibles, admitting your mistakes, admitting your humanity, being able to laugh at yourself, what does self-deprecating humor, which is not about jokes, how does self-deprecating humor warm up your team and maybe even warm up your whole culture?
It levels the playing field. For example, if Mr. Schultz at Starbucks had that rack in there and he's sitting at the CEO chair, that shows everybody in there, they have permission to fail to succeed. And that's the hardest thing for new leaders to understand, is that they got their job because, most people get a management job because they were a great supervisor. Well, they were a great worker. They never made mistakes. You're really good at that. You know what we should do? Is put you in charge of 10 people that you've never managed before, and we're not going to train you, but we'll pay you 10 cents an hour more. How's that sound? Okay, great. So what do? They work harder. If I work hard, they'll see me work hard. So I'll just do this and they'll follow me. Does that ever work? No, we've all been through that. And once they see that you allow them to fail and you tell them the stories of your failure to get there, then they realize, oh my God, I could be like you too. I could be the CEO of Starbucks because he failed. And it's a fantastic way to bring people upward. The other thing about failure stories is when you fail, that immediate moment, you don't feel so good about it. And the thing about how far is too far with humor, David, if you and I are walking down the street where we expect gravity to hold us up, and I trip and fall, the first thing that you would do is kind of point at me and laugh because I fell down. But if I got up with a broken arm, it wouldn't be funny anymore until that arm healed. And once that arm is healed, then it's funny again. So we all have scars and people love to show their scars, and you can talk about the scars to anybody, but we don't show our open wounds to people. So if you're wondering how much is too much, that's a good spot to kind of look at.
That's a great way to unpack it, the scars versus the open wounds. Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. I know, Ray, you do a lot of consulting and mentoring and speaking and training on this. What are some of the other myths or hesitations that with your clients and your audiences, you first have to help them overcome those myths or those misunderstandings about what humor in the workplace and what humor in a leadership role specifically can do? What are some other hesitations or some other things that they go, yeah, Ray, I don't think this will work for me?
Well, recently there has been 3 or 4 different people that I coached to kind of like the Shark Tank pitch for venture capitalists. And they brought me this pitch and they said, yeah, this is exactly what it does. And this is exactly what we do. And I said, okay, so let's scrap this whole presentation you have and start from the beginning, because venture capitalists buy into the person first and then their numbers and their product second. You have to get past that. And they steadfastly held to their guns and their slide deck, and they failed miserably. And I said, well, are you ready to change now? And they said, well, we got to tell what our product is. And I said, how about this? And I softened it up for them a little bit, and I made people smile, and they took it in and they got money for it. So, and that happened in all 3 instances in the last 6 months that I've worked with venture capitalists to do that. So that's a big one. The other thing is when people interview, they think that they have to show how smart they are. And it's really, why is the company going to make more money because they hire you, but they have to like you to want to hire you? So I showed them that 91% of all CEOs, when they're looking to hire, they want 2 things: a good work ethic and a sense of humor. And they go, that's all they want? I go, yeah, you start from there. If you got your background, which looks good, you don't have to worry about that. Get them to like you. What's rapport? What's trust? Is a smile. Don't go for a laugh, because business humor is a safe surprise. It's not a big surprise. It's a safe surprise that puts that smile on people's thing. And that's something we talk about in the seminars we do.
Absolutely. Let me also ask you, leadership through laughter when it comes to sales. So sales leaders, salespeople, sales teams. I think this is another area where people are deathly afraid of bringing in quote unquote funny stuff or jokes or humor or laughter. But at the same time, let me go back half a step. The reason they're afraid is because actual money is on the line, right? Actual, like, we'll either make the sale or we're not going to make the sale. We're either going to get a big order or we're going to get no order. Because you have this direct sales and sales leadership experience that you told us about, let's bust that myth wide open right now. What role does humor and laughter have in the sales process, in the sales leadership process, when we're either leading our sales team or as a seller when we're dealing with a potential prospect?
That's a great thing to walk down that path, because that's been my career, basically. And the backbone of trust and likability is laughter. And you have to bring it out of somebody before they'll even listen to you talk about what you want to sell them, right? It's kind of like when somebody walks up to you and creeps you out, you wonder what creeped you out. Well, at some point you thought, who are you? Why are you here? How long are you going to stay? Are you friend or foe, right? Don't have people think like that, and then you can talk as long as you're interesting. Well, if you have a big sign over your head that says salesperson, they're like, I'm going the other side of the street. You know, it's kind of like they lock the door with their car with their elbow to keep you out of their car, kind of thing. So if you break the ice with something that will make somebody smile, they will go with you. For example, I was the sales manager for the most award-winning small business in the United States. And I got these guys to understand the process of putting a smile on somebody's face. And he said, you can't do it without using their name. I said, oh, yeah, I can, because we worked all on the phone. And we had a chocolate potluck that day. And I said, just come over to me to the phone and listen to what I do. And I just went to our database for a government agency. So this is not like your fun place to call into. It's a government agency. And a woman picked up the phone and said her name. And I said, we just had a chocolate potluck. Our entire room smells like melted chocolate. And I shut up. And it was silent for a few seconds. And then she said, tell me more. And I talked about all the things that people brought in with chocolate. And we talked for 10 or 15 minutes about chocolate before she said, oh, by the way, who are you and why are you calling me? And we talked about doing business with this agency. And I sent her our information. Of course, I put a few pieces of chocolate in there. And 6 months later, we had done a $500,000 contract with this agency that we had never worked for before. So the humor did it. If I'd called up and said, we are America's most award-winning, I call it the Country Bear Jamboree kind of robotic sales pitch right there.
Right.
But it's easier to get to the result of what you're selling by showing it through a humorous story than it is by telling people what they get when they buy it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, for sure. For sure. Let's talk about kind of corporate culture, because I think a culture that knows how to smile, a culture that knows how to laugh, a culture that is based on, like you said, the building blocks around humor, trust, likability, assuming the other person has good intent, safe levels of humor. Zoom out to the 50,000 foot view, the impact on a culture where a lot or most of the leaders have had this kind of training, this kind of mentorship, this kind of coaching. What's it like to work there? What does their employer brand start to become? What does their recruiting and retention track record start to be? What are some of the macro benefits of doing this?
Well, think about walking through a building where everybody that saw you coming smiled instead of turned the other way and ran away. Oh, the boss is here. Get back to work. Get back to work. That's what the culture is like. There's smiles everywhere. You can walk into a business that has this culture and you can feel it before you ever talk to anybody. There's buzz, there's activity, there's smiles, body language. What you get from the leaders, you get more confidence, more charisma, more executive presence, which leads to more retention of staff. So you cut way down on turnover. And the other side of it too is people want to do more. A couple of executives, when you're talking about the pushback on that, I got pushed back on by executives about, well, we can't have fun at work. And I said, well, have you ever been in a job where you stayed longer than you should have and took less money because it was just a joy to be there? Oh, yeah. Early in my career, I did that all the time. Well, the reason you stayed is because you're having fun. And wouldn't it be great to have the company hold those people in their palm of their hand like the other company held you in the palm of yours right there? So it is just a joy for customers. People want to do business with these companies. They don't care what it costs. You're not going to get nitpicky comparing of prices with an atmosphere of joy. The In-N-Out burger out here on the West Coast and Chick-fil-A, I believe, has the same kind of reputation. But when you walk in there, you know that you've walked into a place that has this appreciation of joy in the workplace from day one. It has to come from the top down. There's many other national McFranchises that you get a completely different experience every time you walk into a different place that they own all across the country.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. The way that I talk about this, and I'm far from any sort of humor expert, but humor and wit and that sense of self-deprecating humor, I've always felt that was a big indicator of having mastery in reserve. So a company that's like working really, really, really hard and they're very serious and they're kind of grinding it out and there's no margin, there's no extra margin to be humorous or to bring a smile to someone's face or to bring joy to their customers or their prospects. I'm like, well, that company's working too hard. They must not really know what they're doing. They're kind of struggling just to kind of deliver the basics. Whereas you go in either for an experience like you're talking about, or even with product packaging, right? Product packaging that has a little bit of humor, that has a little bit of wit, that is a little bit extra surprise and delight. You're like, wow, this company must have it going on. Not only are they great at what they do, but they have the extra bandwidth to be funny. They have the extra bandwidth to make me smile. they have the extra bandwidth to add a little something extra to bring a bright spot to my day that I wouldn't ordinarily have. So this reminds me of like method cleaning products, or, some of the gourmet foods that have funny labels, some of the gourmet beers, some of the craft breweries have like funny, commentary on their labels and things like this. What's been your experience, like just with the clients that you mentor when they've started to make this shift? What kinds of comments are they getting about like, wow, you seem really happy, or, what happened at work? Like, did you get a promotion, or, your company must be doing great. I'm betting the stock price is through the roof, because it comes through their personality that they have this mastery in reserve. What's been your experience with that concept?
Well, the funny thing is that people do notice it, but the first question they usually get asked is, hey, David, have you lost weight? Because there's just this extra strut in your step when you do that. Because how much fun is it to go through life and have people smile at you and have people laugh at the things that you say? That the confidence is through the roof. The presence that you carry into the room is through the roof. And kind of going back to that pushback, I got pushed back really hard by a company that wouldn't use me. They were very stiff, and I'm not perfect for everyone. And I tried something. I said, well, Google has a CFO. And they said, well, we have a CFO. I said, well, not like Google's. Google's is a chief fun officer. And where's their stock price compared to yours? And I saw that hit really, really hard to him. But then I realized I had a line to tell in another story later on down the road. But what I think great leaders have to become is what I call a speech awareapist. So it's not a therapist, but it's an awareapist. You have to listen to what people are saying around you. And where humor comes in, most people that have this ability to kind of create humor on demand, they focus on the logic of the words instead of the logic of the ideas. And one of the things that I was trying to do is schedule more virtual coffees for myself. And I wanted to come up with a phrase that I could put in an email to kind of catch people's eyes. And I put the phrase coffee and ketchup. And actually Googled that. And that's actually a thing. I didn't know that when I started that. But I would say coffee and ketchup. No, not that. Catch up. And everybody said, oh, that was funny. And they sent me a reply back in there. So the clicks on that email that I sent out with were probably 15 to 20 points higher than the normal clicks that I get, because everybody wanted to know about coffee and ketchup.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in this arena. I think the other thing that's really important is when we talk about this notion of personal brand, right? This is whether you are the one that gets raised, praised, and promoted. This is the person who gets all the plum projects. This is the person who gets sent to the conference to do the keynote or the virtual keynote or speak as the face and the voice of the brand or the department. Where does leadership through laughter impact your personal brand, not just at your company, but also in your kind of brand portability? Like, to what extent can people that have leveraged this personality strength, can they write their own ticket? Can they kind of go to some other company, and will they be the first to be recruited and the first to be chosen in their career trajectory?
Absolutely. The key thing about leadership through laughter, one of the proudest moments when I work with somebody is seeing them transform from geek to chic. There's a lot of tech people that love the ones and zeros of their job and hate the human interaction that goes with it. Well, if they can walk into any room and make a room full of people smile, talking about gewgaws and doodads and widgets and sticky loops and problems in the marketplace, they can write their ticket anywhere. Because the number one thing that really is attractive in a job interview is the confidence of the individual. That translates into personal lives. That translates into better home lives. When people smile around you, it's just everybody wants to be around you. Who doesn't want to hire that person?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to work for that person? We all know somebody, there's just something about them. And we actually broke down charisma into 17 different components. And the ones that always show up into any leader that you've ever worked for that you've really enjoyed, they have genuine concern for others, and they have a little bit of that childlike awe and wonder that still sees the world as a fun place. You take a 4-year-old, they laugh 200 times a day. When you get to age 50, it's 4. So humor, I guess you could say, it makes you young again.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit. I know you have a couple of different ways that you work with clients. The humor algorithm, is that one of the first things that people should look at? And tell us about what that is and how that works.
The humor algorithm is a program that's designed to show people the process of humor. It's not a magical, mythical thing like a unicorn. It's not a gift that I had. It's something that over, years and years and years of having a father that was funny and understanding, like when I was in high school, well, so if I laugh, the girls will listen to me. I kind of enjoyed that as well. But learning the tricks and the secrets that make people lean in, the lean in factor with it. And so what the humor algorithm does, it kind of shows you the process of humor. The main part of it is something that I guess therapists would call a phonetic ambiguity, which I call a two-way option. It's a word that can be processed in two different ways if you look at the logic of the words versus the logic of the idea. And that's where most things are laughed at. When you and I have a conversation and I get you to laugh, it's because I usually misinterpreted something that you were thinking in a completely different direction. And there's really about 5 to 6 steps with that. And it's a program I usually run it every other month for individuals just to understand the process of humor. So that would be a great way to be able to put a little bit of humor in everything that you're doing. And it's designed for people that aren't funny. And it's designed to get them to put a smile on somebody's face. And it's like anything else. Everybody wants to be a ninja overnight, but you give me an hour a week on a Tuesday night every month, and I'll get you getting people to smile by the time we're done.
And to be a better leader, and to be a better seller, and to be a better person, maybe.
Oh my God, you'll be accepted everywhere, and people will want to work for you. You can get people to paid less money if you really wanted to do, because you're creating fun around the workplace, and people will do that for less money. Right. But you want to make more money so you can pay them more.
Very nice. I like it. Well, Ray, I've got 2 final questions for you as we're wrapping up. The final question is, where can people get connected and stay connected to more of your brilliance? I know we have some resources and some gifts and some cool things. Even before we get to that, though, my second to last question, if folks were to take one overarching concept from our conversation today about the genuine importance of laughter and humor in a leadership role, whether that's sales leadership, corporate leadership, personal brand, what do you hope that one central takeaway idea might be?
I think that the fastest way to get buy-in and lean in and interest from anyone that you meet, work with, talk to, prospect into, bump into in the street is if you can create a smile on your face, you have just created someone else that wants to know you a little bit better.
Nice.
That's what Leadership Through Laughter does.
Totally fantastic. Now, where can people get connected and stay connected to more Ray Engan brilliance? We've got websites, we've got gifts, downloads. Where can we send people?
Not surprisingly, the website for Leadership Through Laughter is called leadershipthroughlaughter.com. That is where you can go and take a look at what we do. I also have different gifts that I like to let people latch onto, and I do that through kiwilive.com, and the password on there is Zoom. There is a 52 humor tips on there, which now is up to about 68, and it's the basic for the book because every humor tip has a business story behind it. And the book Leadership Through Laughter, probably part 1 will be out in the beginning of next year, so I'm excited about that. It's just something that the time is right for more humor in the workplace. And that's what creates more productivity, more talent pool. A lot of people I work with said, we really would love to have fun people to work with, but nobody applies. Well, that's catch-22. Nobody applies because they don't want to work there yet. You got to show them that it's interesting and fun to do that. And that's what the Leadership Through Laughter one-on-one mentoring program really does. It puts the fun back in functional at work. It really does.
I love that soundbite. That's totally fantastic. So all of these links will be in the show notes directly under this episode when you go to thespeakingshow.com. It's kiwilive.com, kiwi like the fruit, live like we're talking live, kiwilive.com. Password is Zoom, ZOOM. And then, of course, the main website to connect with Ray, leadershipthroughlaughter.com. click on the link right below this episode, stop the car, pull over, write it down, do what you need to do, connect with my friend Ray Engan. And Ray, pleasure to have you on. We got to have you back.
Thank you so much, David. It's always fun to get to spend some time with you and talk a little about leadership through laughter.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.